Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Disney's The Mighty Ducks Game Changers, Episode 5. So, going into this episode, I would say this episode, compared to a lot of the others, is a pretty decent episode because we have it where there are side characters that seem to have a story uh, in this episode, and those side core characters are, of course, the people that are on the team. So I can give a quasi thumbs up to that. With that said, also we of course need to introduce yet another person into the fold to have this person take up this entire episode, which I gripe about, and I already knew was going to happen at some point, because I think when watching these reviews as a whole, you will know that my wheels were already churning, that I'm assuming, well, they're probably going to do a whole entire episode about so-and-so person, just you wait, and surefire enough, that's what ends up happening. So, going into this episode, we have it to where, reasonably, I would say that it's kind of I would say that it's probably a very Evan-centered episode. It seems like we get Bombay pitching a little bit more, or pitching in, in this episode more so than any others. We have it to where reasonably there is actually this thing called hockey in this show. Wow, hockey. What a crazy surprise. And plus, with this episode, it actually looks like legitimately there was I guess footage was better or something, because it actually looked like a hockey game going on. It didn't feel like two people in an environment and then somebody scoring a goal. No, it actually looked like there was a hockey atmosphere, because I think maybe they shot this a little bit better or did something. So going on here, we still had one driven story, which I guess I can't really complain about. This episode probably overall is much better than prior episodes have been, because at least the episode meant something. The episode went somewhere, and overall uh, the kind the we went into a good direction with this episode, and I think that has to be said within this episode, was we went into a good direction. So that's all that I could probably say about this episode in a real cryptic sense. With that said, I think that there is kind of blatantly obvious things going on here, where there's obviously some people that are missing into the fold, where we have certain characters who were casted as the Don't Bothers that are all of a sudden gone or not on screen. We end up having the guy who, of course, was the Canadian good-looking guy that all of a sudden is not good-looking enough to, I guess, be on the screen this week. And we also have the one skater slash extreme extreme whatever guy that also is not having screen time yet again for 2 episodes in a row. We have it to where Coop, who was the goalie, had an episode last week, but now this week he's basically a non-existent person just to show up during one portion of this episode. But that's about it. He's just like, oh hey, I'm a goalie, whoop de doo, and gone. Like so much of this episode is catered around both Lauren and I believe uh, Lauren and I think Maya in this episode. I could be wrong because I probably am. Um, yeah, I think Maya is Maya. Sure. Hopefully I'm right about that. Because I could be wrong. No, I think I'm right. I could be wrong. But anyways, moving on. So those two characters seem to be mostly having their own little story within this episode, and really it's basically all about that there are two sides of uh, there are two sides of a different coin, and really that kind of comes to a head within this episode. But I'm also thinking like, well, like get over yourselves. Like both of you are playing hockey, so what is the difference? Like both of them are both doing a sport that would have seemed to have probably shunned them from either one of their clicks or whatever. Because we have it to where like yeah, it's an episode of clicks, I guess, within this episode. So with that said, I think I've teed up this episode enough because there's one special person that ends up coming into the fold of this episode that like I want to keep that secret. And so you have to go into the episode to know exactly what I'm talking about, and people who have seen this episode will know exactly who I'm talking about. So let's get into spoilers so that you'll know who this is and like, oh yeah, like of course, like he said this in the previous episode that they were gonna do this all along. Because yeah. Anyways, so let's get into spoiler time territory. I would say that compared to episodes where I just cringed and hated a lot of these episodes, this one has to just kind of be a thumbs up episode for me. Like, it gave me what I want, which was hockey in a hockey show. Like, I don't really care for. In all honesty, could care less for hockey. I'm not a person that had ever played hockey or anything along all those lines. But when you have a thing called the Mighty Ducks, it has to do the thing that it's known for, which is hockey. And like when that's taken away and is not done, like I'm immediately just like, this is the stupidest show ever. Like you're avoiding the one thing that you need to do the most, and you're avoiding it, obviously. So when we get seemingly hockey in spades within this episode, I'm like, oh, thank God, because all we need is like one real true game of sorts that is going to make me go like, yay, hockey, great. So let's go into this. So let's get into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this episode. So we go along, and in the very beginning of this episode, we end up having the hockey players practice hockey. And so we end up having Rob Griffin spelled with an E, not an I, because heaven forbid. It should have been spelled with an I. Should have been spelled with an I. It really should have. But anyways, so we have Rob who walks into this Ice Palace Arena, and who might this man be? Well, he is none other than Evan Morrow's father, biological father. Evidently, Evan didn't take Rob's last name, and that is what it is. If you guys are casting for an older brother, no. It would be nice to be a part of a show, but I don't know what my part would end up being. Like one like I would probably end up being one having to shave my beard, which I don't think I'd do that. Because none of these people look like they're actually from Minnesota. They don't. But it is what it is. So we go on here and have because the only thing that is tying them again to us having them say that it's oh yeah it's Minnesota is the Minnesota Wild. That's tying them on to this episode, which is a game that they never even do or go to or whatever within this episode. We just end up having Bombay mentioning that they're going to go to the Wild game, and eventually we'll get there. So that's just going to tie them on to saying that, oh, yeah, this is still Minnesota, just so you know. Just so you know, just so you're aware. Even though nobody has the northern accent of anybody. I don't know why I have it right now, but I do, I guess. No, but not really. But anyways, so we go on here and we have Rob going and saying, like, well, hey, man, I I came into the other Mighty Ducks rink and I was looking for you, but I couldn't find you there. And so we have it to where Rob, I guess, stumbled upon the Ice Palace and found his son playing for the Don't Bothers. And so we end up having Evan just going like, well, yeah, like I'm just part of this team now. And because Rob is just like, well, hey man, like the Mighty Ducks are really good. Like, why are you on this team now? And Evan's just like, nah, like mom put it all together, and and so now I'm actually getting to actually freaking play, so on and so forth. So we have it to where Rob is trying to make up for lost time, and so Rob is talking to Alex about, hey, like how about I bring Evan to a bar and like me and him like catch up. Cuz Rob is also trying to do gigs and stuff like that, and is trying to like reconnect with his son on top of that. So we end up having it to where there's like some kind of kerfuffle about how exactly that Evan could like get to this bar and leave and stuff like at a reasonable time and so on and so forth and whichever. And so Bombay is like, well, hey, like I'll pitch in and I'll help him, like I'll help him get to there, and like I'll be able to get to know this Rob guy and all kinds of things. And so we end up having to where like Evan's like, oh yeah, great, I'll love to spend time with Bombay and so on and so forth. This will be great. And so we end up having it to where Evan, Bombay, and Rob end up going to this bar, and we end up having Bombay talking and reminiscing about all the times of him being on the road with minor league hockey, or whenever I guess he was maybe with the Ducks or won any number of other things. So we have it to where like Rob is kind of like reminiscing with Bombay as well about all the pranks that they used to do, or all the things that they used to do while they were on the road, eventually having an eating contest. And so we eventually have them plop in front of them a bunch of wings, and then we have Rob and Bombay who are like, yeah, like how about we do a eating contest right now? And so we end up having Bombay and Rob just endlessly eating and eating all these wings, to where Evan is like, yeah, like I want to see like this go down, like I want to see who wins. And so we end up having them eating numerous and numerous and numerous wings over and over and over, to where they're staying way too late at this bar. And so we have Alex calling Evan saying like, well, hey, like it's time to get home, like dude, like I'm waiting for you. And so we have it to where Alex is at the bar supposedly waiting for Evan, but it's kind of obvious that she's not on the screen. So like there's like they're saying that Alex is there, but she's not. Because if she, like they try to conveniently like write her off screen to where like Bombay goes off and he's like, well, like I'm gonna like I'll follow Evan to speak to Alex, and so we have it to where Bombay ends up coming back and is like, well, yeah, like Alex just chewed my head off. It's like, sorry, like we were just having fun, and so we end up having Rob giving Bombay a little advice to like, hey man, like I know that you might be like trying to win over Alex, and so here's the way of which that I tried to win her over. And so we have Bombay coming in the very next day and giving Alex a little stuffed toy unicorn, and Alex is going on to say it's like, oh my god, like Bombay is turning into just like Rob, to where like Bombay tried to win me over with a little stuffed animal like Rob used to do. Like I don't like how like Bombay is ending up being just like Rob. Like as if like Alex is having like man troubles and all kinds of stuff along those lines. So we we end up having it to where so Lauren and Maya have to have a story, and so we'll get to that. So we have it to where Lauren and Maya, seemingly after this practice is over, they decide to do a TikTok thing with one another where we find out that Maya has some Brooklyn like accent or New York accent, New York, New York, and we end up having it to where I guess Lauren can speak Elvish, and so we end up having them decide to do a TikTok video together. I guess to try and promote that, like, hey guys, we're doing something from 2021. TikTok. Yeah, isn't that great? Like, we're trying to be, like, relatable. Because Marvel Comics tried to have some one of their heroes have a TikTok account, and so they like I think Disney is just saying like, hey man, we need to be relatable by having them do like a TikTok thing. You would think they would just as easily have them be like a blogger or something like that, because reasonably they could blog about this whole like Mighty Ducks thing, because or the Don't Bothers thing, because like why not? That would be a smart thing to just blog about, and then just like their hockey experience or whatever. You would think that that would be an easy thing to blog about, but I guess not. So going on here, we have Laura and Maya doing this TikTok thing together, and so the very next day we end up having Maya going to the lunch. She ends up going to lunch and talking to Nick and Evan and whoever else that has to matter at this point in time with the team. And so we have it to where Nick is coincidentally talking about Maya's TikTok, because I guess he's a stalker that is trying to like follow Maya around bizarrely. No, like I'm sure he like tries to get into every single bit of like social medias and all kinds of things, because he's like that like entrepreneur kind of guy, and so on and so forth. He tries to like get connected with everybody on the team and so on and so forth. Like I think he's connected with everybody within the school and so on and so forth. That's why he sent like a mass uh email out to everybody or whatever, saying like, hey guys, we're putting together a Don't Bothers team. Do you bother being on our team? No. So we have it to where Nick mentions about Maya's TikTok, and so Lauren is like, well, hey, where's the video of me and her doing our fun little skit? And Nick says, well, like, I guess she hasn't posted it yet. Like, I don't know. It seemed like she was going to put it on there, but I don't know. I guess maybe it's just not on there. And so we have it to where we find out like Maya had put like some kind of newer thing with one of her friends, and so Lauren confronts Maya about it and says like, well, hey, like, why is it that you didn't put our TikTok video on TikTok? And so we have to where Maya says like, well, it's because like I didn't want my friends to laugh at you, and we end up having to where Lauren is like, well, no, like you just didn't want to be seen with the girl that speaks Elvish and is dressing like Lord of the Rings 24/7, and so we end up having Maya just going like, oh, I guess she's right, and yeah, like all we have connected to one another is just hockey, and yeah, so we eventually have it to where Maya eventually tries to go and make amends with Lauren, and Lauren can actually be seen with Maya because she's talking to her, I guess, elvish, whatever, cosplayish friends. And so Maya's like, did you seriously separate me from your cosplayer friends? And Lauren is like, well, yeah, because you don't know the difference between like a battle axe and a longsword. And so, since you don't know the difference between those two things, then like I can't have you be seen with my friends. And so we have them both coming to the consensus that it's like, well, neither one of us can be the bestest of friends, so now here's what we have to do. We have to have Lauren dress up in like the most fashionable clothes, and we have to have Maya, who has to wear like a cloak to like kind of show that that both of these people are friends, and at the end of the day, and at the end of the day, they are to be the bestest friends ever, I guess. I don't know. Like I was expecting there to be like a little bit more out of this, just to be like I don't know. I was kind of expecting there to just kind of be more with this story, like as if like there was some. Not saying that there has to be like some like relationship between these two. No, like I was just trying to figure out like, okay, why exactly was this important? And I felt like this story is just going to get bottled within this episode, and we're probably going to forget about it after this episode is done, because I'm sure somebody's going to get tied with so and so person. Like, it's the sleepover thing all over again, where we have that sleepover episode that's bottled within that episode, and then we just have it to where we have the cosplayer slash princess episode where like that's just going to be bottled within this episode, and then eventually we're going to just have eventually asking, well, hey, why is it that this one kid has no screen time, or why isn't that this person doesn't have any screen time? It's like, well, it's just gearing up for when they eventually will have screen time, and then they will have their own story about how they're probably two sides of the different coin or whatever, and have their episode and how they have to like relate or whatever the heck is going on. But anyways, so moving on. So we have that kerfuffle, and that goes away. So we end up finding that Evan is going to have another hockey game. Actually, hockey in this episode. What a refreshing thing to see. So we have it to where Bombay is out, and he's talking with Rob, and it seems that we find out that Rob is to get a gig in Milwaukee, and so we have it to where Bombay is like, well, yeah, but aren't you going to Evan's game? And we have it to where Rob is like, well, yeah, but like I got this gig, and like this gig will lead me to another gig, and this gig will lead me, and so we end up having Bombay just going like, dude, I don't give a about your gig. Like, I don't care. So we have it to where Bombay just takes Rob into his truck and drives him to seemingly go to the airport to go to Milwaukee, but instead we have Bombay kidnapping Rob to force him to go to uh, Evan's game instead. So we have it to where like the game is going on, and we have Evan who is looking in the stands for Pop Pop, and he of course does not see Pop Pop. And so immediately after they drop the puck, we have Evan who kind of like hits somebody the wrong way to where eventually he ends up getting like shoved into the penalty box. And so we end up having it to where, of course, like this game is like to where the Ducks are like 0-4. And so we have it to where eventually Evan gets out of the penalty box, and we have Rob and Bombay making their way into the stands to where, of course, so Evan can see that his father is actually at his game. And so we have it to where consistently Rob the entire time is like, well, hey, like I saw a portion of the game. Could I make it to the airport to Milwaukee? And Bombay is like, no, you sit down and you watch this game. Like you sit down and you stay here. And we have it to where Rob is like consistently fidgeting to where Bombay is like, dude, stay here, watch this game for once. So we have it to where eventually Rob is actually getting into the game. And plus, Evan is like the best star of this game now that he's seeing his father in the stands. He's like, oh man, like I gotta perform well for my dad, because how many times is he ever going to actually see me play? And so we have it to where Evan is just like triple deking and all kinds of stuff. He's doing all these like cool little maneuvers, and so they end up like saying like, oh, okay, well, it's time to put up this little play that it's going to make Evan look really cool and look really strong. And so we end up having it to where Evan is doing this play and Rob knows exactly what the play is. It's like, oh my God, it's so and so play. Like they're doing this. And so we have it to where Rob is just like on the edge of his seat going like, I hope they make it. Like I hope they score this other goal so it's not tied anymore, because we have it to where Evan is just like repetitiously just firing these nets in, and Evan eventually gets this game tied, and because eventually we have it to where supposedly the announcers has built this up to be the worst possible hockey game of all time, because we have it to where both the Don't Ballers and this other team are just the worst of the league. And so we end up having it to where Evan is to go and get his own time to get the very last goal, because we have it to where they had gone and taken like a timeout to have Alex try to like talk to them about like, hey, what should we do? And we have it to where like Lauren and Maya were like butting heads, and we have it to where Nick is like, hey, like put this whole thing aside, because if anything, like my best friend's father is here, so like we gotta make him look really good, and like you gotta put your squabbles aside. And so we end up having it to where they decide to, of course, give the puck to Evan. And so, of course, Evan ends up, of course, going and scoring the last goal, actually winning a hockey game. Yeah! And Rob is like, yeah, he won. And so we have it to where Alex assumes that Rob had finally come to his consensuses and wanted to be a good father. So Alex is just like, like I'm really happy that Rob actually did this for his son. But we have Alex who ends up walking in on Rob doing a little phone call mentioning that like, well, yeah, like I'm stuck here because I ended up getting kidnapped and like I couldn't make the plane out. I'm sorry. And so we end up having Alex going like, so like Rob didn't want to really come to the game. It was actually Bombay who like hog-tied him to come in here. Like, like somebody's trying to win some points. Somebody's trying to win some brownie points on me. And so we have it to where Alex goes and mentions to Bombay because Bombay asks Alex like, well, hey, like, how about you and me go to a wild game, a Minnesota Wild game, and like so that way like uh, maybe I can explain some stuff to you. Maybe you'll get some kind of like heads up about like maybe what you want to implement in future games and stuff along those lines. And Alex is just like, yeah, like I think I might be just slammed with work, and I don't think I might be able to, like, I don't think I'll be able to make it, which is kind of code for, yeah, like, Alex is trying to just be like, yeah, I don't know if I should probably go and date Bombay right now. It might not look the best, blah, 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 blah. And so we have it to where Alex, after the whole thing with Rob, we have Alex who's just like, well, you know what, Bombay? Like, I think I've made an opening for that night with uh, you and me to go to the Minnesota Wild hockey game. So, are you still free? And we end up having it to where Bombay is like, well, that would have been nice and all, but I ended up wanting to decide to take Evan to the game because like I thought uh kind of with him like being like the MVP of this game and stuff like that, like I thought it would just be a good idea to like go with him to the game, and we end up having to where like Alex is just kind of like looking on, just kind of like like trying to win me over again with the brownie points, just trying to like win over my son. I see. Like we have that like little like kind of moment within this episode, like towards the tail end of it, and so yeah, like it's a fun overall episode where I think really like Bombay's character really wanted to be involved with Evan, not so much Rob. Uh, like yeah, there is some kind of like connections there between Rob and Bombay, but you can also see that Bombay is also uh, like I think he's very much trying to get reconnected with the world because I think him being in this ice palace was really just like shutting himself off from the world because basically after hockey was taken away from him, like basically that was his way of just saying like, well, like I'm just gonna like completely disconnect myself from everything, and that's where we end up within this episode. So with that said, I am going to call this one a review. If there's anything that I probably missed out about or I skipped around about, there's probably some stuff that probably isn't actually really important in this episode, but we kind of had to also get like the of course the kind of stories going on within this episode as well to just kind of see where this is going to head within other episodes, if there are going to be any more episodes after this or whichever. So with that said, I am going to get out of here. So goodbye everybody. Goodbye everybody.